Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
8:06 now. It's the big 8 o'clock hour. We love that. It's time for a little Stevie Wonder and to get you juiced up and ready to take on the day with Chris Plant Show coming up 60 minutes from now. But first, Julie Gunlock and I, we have some more dragons to slay, don't we, Julie?
Sure do. Good morning.
Coming up in 30 minutes, Congressman Brandon Gill will join us. Talk about that rescissions package. But first, we bring in KT McFarland. KT, always good to speak with you, former Deputy National Security Advisor for President Donald Trump and foreign policy maven extraordinaire. Good morning, KT.
Good morning.
Do you like Coke or Diet Coke? Which is your favorite?
Ooh, I'm a Coke Zero person.
You do Coke Zero? That's like Meredith. She likes the Coke Zero. I do the Diet Coke. I'm like President. That's why it was funny to see President Trump getting all excited about the pure cane sugar and the Mexican Coke, they call it, because he doesn't even drink it. He drinks Diet Coke. Famously drinks Diet Coke.
But it's so, but can I just tell you one of the first times I was in the Oval Office, I was with the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, and President Trump's behind the, Resolute desk, the infamous, famous Resolute desk, and President Trump buzzes his buzzer, and the valet comes out, and didn't even have to be asked, and he brings President Trump a great big glass of Diet Coke with a lot of ice in it. And so President Trump puts it right down on the desk. And I'm thinking, this is a Resolute desk.
Coaster!
Ring. This is going to be, what am I getting? Can I say this? And I'm worried about it. And I'm thinking, like 100 years from now, somebody's going to point to that and say, that's President Trump's ring from his Diet Coke. And so then he looks at me, and ever the gentleman, he said, oh, would you like a Diet Coke too?
Oh.
So Tillerson and I we just nod, yes, of course, sir. And so the valet brings 2 more Diet Cokes in glasses with ice, and he hands them to us. Again, no napkin, no coaster. Oh. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, oh, no. Oh, my God, now there are going to be three rings on the Resolute desk for 100 years. So I look at Tillerson, and I'm thinking. So I'm sitting there thinking this is like the end of the his American history.
Right, you can't focus on foreign relations anymore.
No, I'm not talking about the chemical weapons being used in Syria. And then I look at the rug thinking, I'll put my Diet Coke in the rug. And I say, oh no, I'm going to spill it. I'm going to forget it's there. And then I'm going to have Diet Coke all over the historic rug. And I can't hold it because I'm trying to take notes at the same time. So then I look over at Tillerson, who had one of those pocket napkins that men have in suit pockets.
Ugh.
And he pulls out the pocket napkin, and he puts it on the Resolute desk, and we both, side by side, put our little Diet Cokes there. So we solved the problem. But I've got to wonder, what is happening now in the Oval Office? Are people pulling out napkins or coasters? I know Donald Trump's ring is going to be there for all posterity, but I sure hope they're not another 5 or 6 little rings.
No, I think Susie Wiles has that energy. I think she's following the person around with coasters all the time there, amongst all the things that she's accomplishing. Katie, you mentioned Syria, and so that's an effortless segue into Israel's launch yesterday, heavy strikes in Damascus, right there in the capital of Syria. What is this all about? Can you unpack this for us?
Okay, so Syria has been beset by civil war and warring factions for, 20 years? And it's gotten even worse since the new government has taken over. But we think of governments as sort of there's an army, there's a president, not in Syria. In Syria, there are tribes, and each tribe has its own set of weapons. Each tribe has probably its own subgroups within the tribes. And there are a lot of ethnically different tribes. There's the Druze, it's a minority. There are some Christians in Syria. There are various varieties of Muslims, of various extremist levels, and then there's a government that is struggling to try to take control. Now, when President Trump, when he went to the Middle East, he was unlikely and unwilling to recognize the new self-proclaimed leader of Syria, until the other Arab leaders, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia and others, said, look, take a chance on this guy. We know that he has terrorist Al-Qaeda connections, ISIS connections, but he wants to take the country in a different direction. So President Trump said, unexpectedly, he said, okay, I'm going to give the guy a chance. I'm going to drop the American sanctions. We'll let Syria have its opportunity to achieve greatness. And what you're seeing now is all of that playing out. where the government of Syria isn't really in control of a lot of its military factions. But Israel, right next door, has its own interest, which is to protect the Golan Heights, which is the very high area between all these flat places. Whoever controls the Golan Heights controls the region because you fire down on everybody.
Right.
And this goes back to
that's
biblical
a threat to
times.
Israel.
So
yeah.
That's a threat to Israel. And so that Golan Heights has changed hands every time there's a war in the Middle East for 2,000 years. So what Israel is doing is is protecting the Druze minority, but it's really protecting the Golan Heights,
Right.
which is in the middle of all these different factions fighting.
Real fast, can you give us a thumbnail on who the Druze are?
Yeah, the Druze are yet another minority group in Syria, and we would not think of them as a different group to others, but they've always been sort of they're throughout the Middle East, but they're primarily in Syria, Muslim group, and they're
that's what I was getting at.
They're
they're a Muslim group, but they've got of a somewhat different ethnicity. So why is Israel concerned? I mean, no offense, but I mean, why has Israel decided the Druze must be protected?
I think it's because of the Golan Heights. Druze is one of the major religious groups throughout the region. Maybe there are 1 million of them scattered around the different countries. And the Druze religion is Abrahamic, so they believe in Abraham. They're monotheistic, but they're not really Muslim, but they're not Christian. They just sort of have their own version of religion. I don't know what you would compare them to in the West. But they're more closely aligned with the Christians than they are with the other Muslim groups.
I see.
So,
okay.
I mean, they all hate each other, and they've hated each other for 1,000 years. And the tribes have been fighting, so it almost doesn't matter what they believe in. It's just that they're tribes, and they're family tribes, and they're a family tribe. I mean, go back to the Old Testament. It's really, Abraham had a lot of sons, and he had a lot of descendants. And so then there was another tribe that also had sons and a lot of descendants, and they're still fighting each other.
I want to switch over, KT, to Russia. Putin has rejected the demand for a ceasefire. What's next? What's next with Putin with this whole mess over there?
Yeah, this is why Trump is just so fascinating. He's a real estate guy. He's a business guy. So what he wants to do is he wants to have this done. He wants to check off the list. Yeah. Like he wanted to check off the Middle East. He wants to check off Ukraine because the real issue, he knows, is China. So how was he going to deal with Ukraine? He knows he wants to end the Ukraine war. He just doesn't know how he's going to do it. So plan A was to get to sort of cajole them and charm them both into going to the negotiating table. Didn't work. Plan B was to get Ukraine to the negotiating table. That's now worked. Been messy, but it's worked. And now Putin is the one holding out. So what's Trump doing? Instead of being nice to Putin, thinking, I'm going to cajole and charm you into the negotiating table, that didn't work. So he's going to bully him into the negotiating table. And he's going to do what we had created, which is this maximum pressure. Military pressure by arming the Ukraine, and economic pressure by potentially imposing secondary sanctions. And that means any country that buys Russian oil doesn't get to do business with the United States. The main purchasers of Russian oil are China, which we knew about, but also India. And so to me, the fascinating squeeze art of the deal play would be to go to the Indian government and say, look, America has a lot of extra oil and natural gas. Why don't you buy from us, or at least stop buying from the Russians? We'll produce more, because the squeeze play is to destroy the Russian economy, right? If Russia can't sell oil to anybody, then Russia has no money, can't fight a war. So, again, this is Donald Trump. He knows he wants to end the Ukraine war. He just doesn't know how to do it yet. And he's going to try Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. He'll get there eventually. But unlike any other politician who has sort of an ideological approach of, oh, well, Ukraine has to win. Oh, Russia has to lose.
Right.
He just wants it over. And how is he going to get it done? The other approach, just they have negotiations, nothing ever happens.
KT, always informative and always educational, but sadly, no one will remember anything about our conversation this morning except for your story about the rings on the Resolute desk from your coasterless
Look, that's the one that's
Coke.
going to last for 200 years.
That's right.
That's the 200-year story, not the fact that they're all fighting each other.
There you go.
It's 8:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Well, this is great news, Julie Gunlock. We can finally put to bed all of those rumors, nasty, unfounded rumors that there's some sort of turmoil in the marriage of Barack and Michelle Obama. As you know, Michelle Obama, as we have cataloged here on this program over the last several weeks, continues to go on her podcast that she does with her sexually ambiguous brother. And she trashes her husband all the time. She trashes marriage. She trashes her identity as that she never felt, could be herself. And it was always seemed like backhanded attacks on her husband.
Yeah.
Well, this latest episode of Michelle Obama's podcast that she does with her sexually ambiguous brother had a special moment where Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, the husband of one Michelle Obama, showed up and gave Michelle a very long, lingering hug. I mean, it looked like they hadn't seen each other in months, which may be the case. Here's what it sounded like.
To IMO, look at you.
Wait, you guys like each other?
Oh, yeah, really, huh?
That's so
the
nice.
Rumor mill. It's my husband, y'all.
She took me back.
There you go.
Now, don't start.
I can't.
It was touch and go for a while.
It's so nice to have you both in the same room
I
together.
know.
I know, because when we aren't, folks think we're divorced.
That's right.
It is fascinating, though, Larry. It betrays that they listen. They listen to that gossip.
Are you kidding?
I mean, obviously, this is a audience-tested marriage, right? And so they knew they needed to come together. They needed to make fun of those charges. They need to kind of poke fun at themselves. But, lady, when you go on a podcast every day and you reveal things about your personal life and you bash your husband and you say, like,
always negative.
Women's greatest achievement isn't producing life, and you act all like you're such a sad sack and you've had such a hard life with your billions and your many, many mansions all over the country. I mean, you're not liked. Nobody likes you. Nobody relates to this. And then you bash your husband and then you do this kind of stunt. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
We've got a little bit more here. Barack Obama shows up wearing a white shirt and what appeared to be linen pants with white tennis shoes and no socks. Ew. He's looking lankier than ever, and he was sitting with his legs crossed in an extremely, I'll say it, feminine fashion. And to really dispel the rumors, he shared this little nugget I've got here. Listen.
I had a gay professor in college. At a time when openly gay folks still weren't outlawed.
So brave.
By the way, that's not true. It was the 80s. There were plenty. I had a gay teacher in high school.
And he's on a college campus.
Right.
Perfectly fine.
And so the college was, he doesn't say which college, but it was either Occidental College, one of the most liberal colleges on the West Coast, or it was Harvard or Columbia. But,
they love this cosplay.
The center of gay-bashing homophobia.
And I was brave for being friends with him.
Right, but listen, there's more.
One of my favorite professors. You need that to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group, so that if you then have a boy who's gay or non-binary or what have you, they have somebody that they can go, okay, I'm not alone in this.
There you go. See, you all need to have gay friends so that if you have a child or perhaps, for that matter, a spouse who comes out and reveals that they're gay or non-binary, then you can be okay with that. That's
really
what
offended.
He said, right?
What I'm really offended is that they didn't find a transgender person to be friends with. What's wrong with them?
Well, non-binary is quite close to that, right? All right, so here's this is, by the way, the man who, when he was running for president in 2008, claimed that he was against gay marriage because, Jesus has a say in it. But then 4 years later, running for re-election when he needed all the campaign funds from the gay activist groups, apparently Jesus changed his mind. All right, so here's cut 26, Michelle's sexually ambiguous brother.
Let me tell you. First of all, see, I'm in Wichita, Kansas for Austin's tournament.
Laugh.
And this podcast has made me quite popular.
You're big
famous.
And people come up to me all the time. This woman came up to me and she was so nice. She's like, "Can I have a picture?" Yeah. And then, so you know how you get the side hug? And she's like, "What did he do?"
And you knew she was going to say what he did.
And I was
it wasn't like, what happened to him.
That is so
It was like,
terrible.
how'd he mess up?
How'd he mess up? And I said, well, what makes you think he messed up? Why couldn't it
Well,
been
why
her?
did you just say no one messed up?
Well, because I
why
wanted to keep this conversation going so that I could tell you about it.
Okay, so
like,
understand something here. She's telling this anecdote about how he meets people and they come up and they just think that
And
there's
he's so
marriage trouble.
famous.
Not because they're listening to gossip, not because of news. These are people who listen to the podcast, watch the podcast, and their conclusion that they reach is she's pissed at him.
Yeah, and also, I see what you're saying there, and that's absolutely true. But can we also just back up a little bit and listen to when he goes, "I was in Wichita, Kansas." Did you hear
let's listen to the beginning of the cut. Yeah. Can we listen to that one, Michael?
Let me tell you. First of all, see, I'm in Wichita, Kansas for Austin's turn.
The laugh.
The laugh, because that's a secret message between the three of them. You know where the racist lives. You know where the MAGA people are. You know that Midwest, the flyover country.
People.
Those people. Right. Yeah. But then he goes on to say how famous he is, right? And recognizable and all this stuff. So just repulsive people.
It's all right. But again, just to quell any rumors.
It's all right. Sort of calm down.
No, you're right. Just to dispel any concerns about their marriage, it's good that Barack Obama sort of says, all right, let me set the record straight.
I had a gay professor in college.
How many of his stories start like that? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's 8:24.
Coming up, we're going to be talking to Representative Brandon Gill on the rescissions package. Is it finally time to celebrate? Will NPR and PBS be defunded? We'll find out. Keep it here. It's 8:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:36 on this Thursday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. It's Larry and Julie getting you through the day, and we've been spending a lot of time talking about that amazing vote last night. Not into the wee hours, but it was late-ish, 9-ish, 10-ish, where the Senate, on a vote of 51 to 49, accepted the White House's rescission package as delivered by the director of OMB, Russ Vought. And, of course, the crown jewel of that rescission package is the defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That means your tax dollars will no longer go to fund NPR and ideas and opinions and political advocacy that you don't agree with, which I think is kind of a fundamental constitutional proposal. Joining us right now is Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas, who has been the tip of the spear on a lot of the discussions here with regard to the PBS, NPR stuff, but also some of the funding that USAID was involved with, and that's also part of this rescission package. Okay, Congressman Gill, you know what the first question is. Are you guys going to pass this? Because, of course, the Senate, they can't do anything easy. They had to throw an amendment in there. So now it's up to your colleagues to rally again and vote on it. What's the vote going to look like?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yep, we did it once. We're going to do it again. This is not only a priority for the president, but it should be a priority for every single Republican who's in office right now. And whenever you think about something like NPR and PBS, and we talk a lot about how it's state-sponsored media and it's far-left propaganda outlets, and that's true. But, whenever you're a Republican representative in the House, you hear a lot of talk about being a team player and the importance of keeping the majority. And it is important. That is one of the most important things we can do is keep our House majority. Why in the world would we use the power that voters give us, the majority in the House and a majority in the Senate, to deliberately fund left-wing media that is then attacking our frontline members and our members across the country to the detriment of our efforts to keep the majority? Why would we do that? In other words, why would we use the power voters give us to fund our enemies on the other side of the aisle? That's crazy. So we're finally going to defund them.
Let me. People will say that you this is a First Amendment rights issue, that you are silencing them and then censoring them because of their political positions and because of their opinions. Is that what's at play here? I mean, if NPR really was fair and balanced, would you still be on board with defunding them with tax dollars?
No, I wouldn't. It's just simply that this is not an appropriate, and I'm not even sure it's a constitutional use of our tax dollars, and it's certainly not needed. We're $37 trillion in debt. We don't have money to just throw around at pet projects because we feel like it or because they sound fun. We've got to actually be rational with our tax dollars. But, if any other news outlet came to me, regardless of their ideology, if you guys came to me and asked for tax dollars, I would say no. If Fox News came to me and asked me for tax dollars, I would tell them no. I'm certainly going to say no to left-wing propaganda outlets. But to begin with, we don't need any form of state-sponsored media in the United States of any ideology. We have a vibrant media sector in the United States. Everybody's starting a podcast now. You can get the news on the internet. You can get the news through other means. We just don't need this.
Well, it is just their tactic now is to scare the American public, and it's what's really, frankly, grotesque is using the disaster in Texas to paint this picture for Americans that will happen to you. That if this warning doesn't exist, this is the only way people are warned about such things. Where Media Research Center was able to show that that the local public radio station down in the Texas area was playing a national show. They didn't even break in to talk about the flooding. But this is the tactics of the left, and it's certainly the tactics that have been adopted by the Democrat Party is fear. How do you overcome that? How do you talk to your constituents and say this simply isn't true?
Yeah, that's one of the things they bring up. What you'll also hear occasionally is they'll say, well, we have farmers in rural parts of the country, and they need to know what the weather's going to be. And the only way that they know is that they have these rural broadcast stations who are telling them, I guess, as if they don't have the internet there, which is such a crazy thing to say.
And insulting.
And deeply insulting.
Yeah.
But, I think that the American people can see through that. I mean, the American people are not stupid.
Right.
They can see that these are institutions that, NPR, for instance, very famously during the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, said that they were deliberately not going to cover it because, in their own words, it was nothing but a distraction. Yes. PBS is running cartoons with transgender characters, geared towards 3-year-olds. I mean, this stuff is so far beyond the pale that I think most Americans can see through it and realize this is not unbiased news. These are not, core pillars of our community that the left is trying to portray them as. These are just left-wing propaganda outlets.
And it's funny, Congressman Gill, as I saw these very wealthy, very well-educated white liberals in Washington, D.C. sit at your committee hearings and testify that rural Americans rely on NPR for their crop reports and their emergency broadcast. It was shocking to me that the Democrats didn't bring one witness that fit that description. You would think they could find one person in a rural area who could testify under oath and say, yep, I rely on NPR. Is that because you Republicans refuse to allow that person to testify?
Well, let me tell you that I grew up on a cattle ranch in West Texas. I grew up since I was very little driving tractors and backhoes on the ranch. And it's a 1,000-acre ranch out there, which is big, but it's not a mega ranch by any means. And we have satellites in our tractors now. I mean, the idea that farmers are relying on public radio whenever you have precision farming, even on relatively small ranches, is so ludicrous. Yeah, but no, we would be happy to have. We'd be happy to have them. If they can find somebody who wants to make that case come before the committee, I'd love to question them.
Yeah, that person exists right next to the other individual who can't get a photo ID in this country. They don't exist. Congressman Gill, one other question on this. So you've already sort of delivered on the rescissions package. We got your confidence that you're going to pass this. Recently, this week, actually, you were engaged in an interview where you described D.C. as a third world hellhole. This is our town, damn it. We're the local morning show here in D.C., but you're right. It is actually in many neighborhoods. But this comes in the wake of violent attacks against congressional staffers, tourists who are coming to this city, everyday Americans who want to come to their nation's capital and petition people like you, their representatives. That's their constitutional right. That's why D.C. is different than any other Democrat-run third world hellhole. The American people have a vested stake in this town. You have said that Congress needs to exercise better constitutional control over the management of this city. What's that going to look like? What do you have in mind exactly?
Yeah, and I guess I would frame this is, remember, the United States is the most powerful and wealthy country that has ever existed, ever in all of history. And yet you come to our capital city, Washington, D.C., and whenever I'm here, I tend to stay pretty close to the Capitol. I don't venture very far out. And part of that is because it isn't safe in many areas of this city. It's extraordinarily high crime rates. To your point, we have staffers, we've had members of Congress be assaulted. And you're telling me this is in the capital city of the most powerful country that's ever existed, and we can't even control local crime. I mean, that is disgraceful. This is a city that not only do Americans from all over the country come to meet their representatives and to petition the government, but this is what foreign dignitaries also see oftentimes whenever they're coming to visit.
We agree, and we make this case often, Congressman Gill. I guess the question is, will the House start re-exercising their control over the management of this city, and do you see potentially rescinding the home rule provisions?
The short answer is I would love to see that. I would love to see Congress exercise more control over this city. I think that there are some different budgetary provisions that we can work with in the meantime before if we were able to get a home rule bill on the floor that we can play with, that I think could put some pressure on the city to clean itself up. But I would be entirely in favor of rescinding home rule.
Excellent. Congressman Brandon Gill, you gave us the soundbite we wanted. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And we appreciate you coming on the program. You're one of our favorites in this brand new class. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Yesterday was an amazing day on Capitol Hill as Jill Biden, Dr. Jill, by the way, her so-called work husband, I think he was the chief of staff for the First Lady, was questioned about his understanding and his role in the Biden White House. And we'll take a listen to what happened.
Mr. Bernal, did you ever advise President Joe Biden to pardon his son, Hunter Biden?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Thank you. We're going to go off the record real quick. Okay, we'll go back on the record. Mr. Bernal, was President Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Bernal has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Mr. Bernal, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
That continued on for another 3 or 4 questions, all pertaining to Joe Biden's health. And one question was this: are you aware of anyone else in the White House performing the duties of the President of the United States? And he replied by taking the fifth.
Wow.
Much to see there. It's 8:53.